Now that we've had a lot of time to watch Boudica Prime in action in the open field, it's time to update my best pairings list for archers. Whether you're bringing 1 or even all the way up to 5 pairs of archers, I'm going to give you the very best combos that you should consider using for open field fighting. And on the topic of archers, allow me to tell you about the sponsor of today's video, a city building war game with some pretty sweet looking archers. Today's video is sponsored by the makers of War and Order. War and Order is a city building war game that has infantry, cavalry, archers, and mages. And what I like about the troops in this game is that different tiers of troops actually have different abilities. So for example, this tier 9 archer has a restraint against mages ability. They deal bonus damage to mages. Okay, cool. Mages are another ranged unit. But if you look at this tier 10 archer, he has bonus damage against infantry. So you can try to customize the way your army ultimately works based off of the tier of troop you're using. But also, in this game, you can customize your troops even further with something called the Mystic College. I'm about to unlock this thing. I'm so close to Castle level 30, baby. And then I will be able to have talent trees for my different troop types, which sounds pretty freaking cool, where you can customize how your troops perform. If you're interested in checking out War and Order, which I have really enjoyed over the last 3 months, there will be a link in the description to download the game. Downloading from that link will support the channel and will let the developers know that you found the game through me. So if you're going to go check it out, and I have had a lot of fun playing War and Order, please do use the link in the description. Thank you again to War and Order for sponsoring this video, and if you want, you can join me in Realm 1492 as I make my way to the Alliance leaderboard. Look for the Smash Squad. You can't miss us. As you have seen me recommend in many videos, I recommend having at least 1 march of each troop type, which means even if you're not an archer player, you should have at least 1 archer march in Rise of Kingdoms as of 2022. And it's funny, I used to advise that you could go all in on a murder ball of just 1 troop type. I'll give that to you in this video, but I really don't think you should do that anymore. At most, 3, 1, 1. That's 3 of one troop type, 1 of the other, 1 of the other, is the sort of furthest I would go in the direction of specializing your account, because the new commanders are just too strong. So it should be no surprise that if you're bringing only 1 march of archers, Boudica Prime is going to be involved. And by the way, this video is organized based off of the number of archer marches you're going to bring and what I think the best marches would be in those situations. And I'll give you a few options. Now, if you're bringing Boudica Prime as your one and only archer march, and I'm slowly working on expertising her from the Wheel of Fortune here, so don't mind my construction. She's only like a 5-4 commander right now. But Boudica Prime paired with either Honda or Cyrus or Nebu are your best bets for the open field. And you shouldn't sound too surprised to hear me say all commanders that all have a bunch of march speed. My philosophy here is that if you're fighting in the open field and your march gets caught out and you have absolutely no way of getting away, you're going to get absolutely wrecked. But I'll add to that Boudica Prime plus Honda is probably the best Boudica combination anyways. Although Honda's so versatile, maybe you're using him somewhere else, which is what I personally will be doing. Cyrus with Boudica is what I'm going to use the next time I go and fight in KVK. And I'm not going to expertise my Boudica, by the way, until I'm about to enter into KVK fighting again. And I just made a detailed video about the whole philosophy of when you invest sculptures and how to pick a commander. Card will be up in the top. I will remind you of that video later. Now, other pairings you could use for Boudica would include Artemisia or Esong, and those are all going to be absolutely excellent pairings with your Boudica Prime. Don't get me wrong. So if you wanted for your 1 march of archers to use one of these other commanders instead, like Artemisia, be my guest. I personally will be using Boudica Prime and Cyrus, but I might switch up to the Nebu if I find that I'm getting too beat up. Now, when we step things up to using 2 marches, I actually want to split off that Nebu. So you're going to use a Boudica primary, of course, and you're going to use a Nebu primary. Those are both very strong commanders. With your Boudica Prime, I would recommend either Honda or Cyrus, and if you don't have any of those commanders, then you could just use Esong. And then with your Nebu, I would recommend Tommy or Esong, or also you could consider using Honda because the march speed, troop capacity It's all actually very, very strong. So those are the pairings I would recommend. I personally will use Boudica Prime with Cyrus, and then Nebu with either Tommy or probably Tommy, maybe Honda. Sometimes people are really surprised to hear that Tommy would be the commander that I would use with Nebu, because they like to use Tommy with a commander that has a slower rage cycle. But let me tell you something. If you don't actually use your active skill because the target walks away, it kind of sucks. And thank you again to Cortex. I had a good talk with him before this video to refine this list. And we were talking about, like, what about Honda Tommy, you know? And he hated using that march because by the time you use your active skill on Tommy, they've already walked away. You never get any active skills with Honda anyways. And a target that's standing still is a target that's dead anyways. And it's fine against a flag, but all that to say, while you do want lots of stacks of the Tommy debuff, Nebu is just the most superior commander that you could pair her with for the open field. And if you want to do Honda Tommy, be my guest. But I'll tell you, Cortex did it. He made crit leadership gear. That was all epics, and then he dismantled it. So, GG. Feels pretty strongly that's not the way to go. Last thing I'll add is that I personally often find myself getting pretty focused down. So if you needed something more tanky, I would prioritize that Nebu and Honda combo. I have used it before and been very happy with it over the Nebu-Tommy combo. You get more damage, for sure, with the Tommy, with a big 7-March Murder Ball, if you ever make your way up to that point. But I think most people probably, in a best case, would do like Boudica Prime Cyrus, Nebu Esong, and probably just call it a day. Now, most players don't have access to all these archer commanders that I'm talking about. Like Tommy and Honda are maybe pretty exotic. So honestly, if you had to, what you could do is use like Boudica Prime with literally almost like any archer commander. I mean, if you had to use El Cid, you could use El Cid. Like Boudica Prime with any archer is going to be good. In fact, one consideration you could do if you didn't have some of these commanders I've been describing is to just go Boudica Prime with Mehmed and then Nebu with Esong. That's very easy to make those combos work. And I think that is a solid way to run 2 marches if you were strapped and didn't have some of these more exotic commanders. Now for 3 marches, we're actually not going to change around the 2 combos you've already made. Your 2 march combo, keep using that and add to it 1 new pair, and that is going to be Amanitore with Artemisia. Now I find this combo struggles a little bit for its lack of march speed. I find that Amanitore and Artemisia, I dislike the fact that they are buffing the enemy's skill damage in order to do a tiny amount of damage over time. I dislike all of that, but it still does good damage, and it does enough good damage that I would actually say if you're bringing 3 marches, this is the 3rd march that I would bring into the mix. The Amanitore Artemisia is solid. It's a cut below the Nebu-based marches that we were describing earlier, and certainly a cut further below the Boudica Prime marches, which literally Boudica Prime with almost any generic or archer-based commander is just going to be amazing. But when we get to 4 marches of archers, this is where we really start to have to reach and pick, I think, suboptimal choices to make it happen. And it's funny because a year ago, not even, I was making the same video I'm making now with like the top archer pairs, and I was advising that an all-archer murder ball looked really, 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 really strong. Like, so strong, I was considering moving in on it. And then they released Nevsky and XY, who have a defense reduction that is now duplicative with Ramses on his active skill, so his active skill wouldn't even really do very much for you. And, I mean, obviously it does damage, but the debuff has lost its value. And then, you know, the health reduction on Gilgamesh was really awesome. And then they released Scipio Prime, who made his health reduction not as strong. In fact, there's an AoE health reduction. So we actually lost a couple really premium archer spots to the fact that other commanders made them less valuable. That's not that these commanders aren't still very good. It's that other commanders can now do the same debuffs and are just better commanders. But if you're going to 4 archer marches, here's what we need to start to do. I would still use the same Boudica Prime march you were planning to use before. I'd use the same Nebu march you were planning to use before, probably Nebu with either Tommy or more likely Esong, right? If you have the Amanitore and Artemisia, boom, you're using that march, okay? And the 4th march that you make is either going to be Gilgamesh with Cyrus. These are best marches, okay? Gilgamesh with Cyrus, or it'll actually be Henry with Cyrus. Now, you might think, Henry, wait, really? Yes, really. Henry is good in the open field, and he's a great rally, but I wouldn't invest in him only for open field. So for most people, they're not going to have this investment, which is why I wanted to recommend Gilga Cyrus as sort of the go-to for a 4th Archer March if you were going to make one, and I don't think most people should at this point. However, alternatively, if you had Henry, I think that might be a stronger choice in some ways, just because of how tanky Henry is. He's actually quite good in the open field, okay? Great damage factor, reduces skill damage taken. He's got attack, he's got defense, he's got march speed. You see why he's a strong candidate here, right? The archers led by this commander do more damage. He's got revenge damage if you get targeted. I think he's a solid open field commander, but is also an unremarkable open field commander. You would replace him with literally any commander that has some cool, unique effect. He's not that tanky. He's not that remarkable. So good for what he is, but otherwise, I wouldn't invest in him purely for field. Now, hopefully I've convinced you that 5 Archer Marches really is not where you want to be. But if you were moving all in on 5 Archers at this point, what would that look like and what should you use? Here is where I'm actually going to mix things up a good bit. We're going to start with the Cyrus and Ramses combo. People forget that this is actually a very powerful combo. Cyrus makes the target take more damage over time, and also Ramses does a damage over time effect. So you're basically making it so your active skill on Ramses immediately will do more damage by having the Cyrus primary, Ramses secondary. It's a very strong pair and has been used, I don't want to say like as a classic archer pair, but for those that have Cyrus, they've used this Cyrus and Ramses combo for some time, and I think we got to fall back on that now to try to make 5 good marches. From there, I think you've got to run that sort of Nebu-Tommy combo. I think it's the best place for Tommy. I like it more than Artemisia Tommy. I like it more than Ramses Tommy, where you're trying to like pair in a way that doesn't really make sense. Like you want these other commanders in other places, okay? Then we've got Boudica, and I'm just going to pair her with Isong. Easy choice. Isong's a little squishy. Boudica's got good tankiness, wants lots of, rage and also damage boost, so they're a great pair together. From there, I'm actually going to do something unconventional, and you might have to use Mehmed, but I'd prefer to use Gilgamesh and Honda. I really want the march speed, and the only way I could find to make the 5 Archer marches work is to pair Gilgamesh with Honda. Honda's got 20% march speed. He's great as a secondary commander. Otherwise, if you use like Gilgamesh, Mehmed, dude, this march is going to get caught out in the field and get just freaking shredded. It really is. You got to have at least a little march speed. And on the topic of marches that I guess don't have any, but at least are very strong together, you've got Amonatori and Artemisia. That's your 5th march. So to summarize, if you're bringing only 1 Archer march, I tried to optimize the debuffs that you might have at your disposal with Boudica Prime and Cyrus, or you just optimize your damage with a commander like Nebu. I tried to stack as much march speed as possible. Once you get to 2 marches, you obviously get a bit more diversity, and I tried to split the march speed and still have great debuffs. When you got to 3 marches, this is where we're just bringing in generic damage commanders, and that is maybe the biggest takeaway from this video, is that I can only come up with 2 really great archer debuffing marches at this time. The rest is just damage and replaceable effects that you can either find elsewhere or find better from some other commander, which would steer you in the direction, I think, at this point in Rise of Kingdoms, of not over-specializing an account. And although that was once definitely the meta, I would say now it's time to rein in it a bit and steer more in the direction of, like, let's say you bring 7 marches, which not most people will do, but you're looking at like a 2-2-3 configuration in the grand scheme of things. That's 2 cavalry or infantry or archers, then 2 of the other type and 3 of the other type, right? In fact, at this moment in time with my equipment, I have a 3 infantry, 2 cavalry, and 3 archer setup, where I have 3 sets of archer gear, but you may have realized that's 8 total marches worth of equipment. I obviously can't field 8 marches at a time. So I'm actually considering just melting down my 3rd archer set entirely. And that should be pretty telling to you for the strength of archers at this moment in time. There are a few that have extremely powerful, extremely unique effects, or just, I mean, maybe we won't even call the skill damage taken particularly unique, but our kit is just extreme. We'll leave it at that, right? There's only so many great archers right now, but they are really great. So I think that probably I will melt down one of my sets in favor of just making more legendary equipment for the 7 marches that I have. And at that point, I'm moving all in on 3 Emph, 2 Archer, 2 Cavalry, but we'll see. I could still reverse that decision. I've got some time. For me personally, I'm probably waiting until we get a reveal on leadership commanders, probably in a month and a half from now, before I make any huge investments in equipment in one direction or another. And we'll see if those leadership commanders really shake up where things should go. Maybe we'll see like, oh man, you got to pair with archers and you need a 3rd archer march. You just have no clue until the commanders are available. And that's why I try to time my investments very carefully with when I'm about to actually fight in KVK, which I covered in yesterday's video. You probably want to go watch that. Card will be up in the top. And if you enjoyed this, throw a like on here, subscribe to the channel. And until next time, you have fun smashing the kingdom. Leave your comments down below with any other archer pairs I should have considered.